know it's all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is inspirational to creation coach, 20 times Amazon best-selling author coach, certified high performance coach, and transformational coach, no other than Ms. Nina Amir.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome, Miss Nina, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Well, you covered a lot of it to where they want to go by helping them step into being someone who can actually take the actions that allow them to, uh, hold on, something weird is happening on my phone. Sorry about that.
No
I help
worries.
them get from where they are to where they want to go by stepping into the identity that has the habits and mindset that allows them to take the actions to create whatever it is that matters to them. And I do that for just about anyone. I work with a lot of writers because I'm also an author coach. But I think to be holistic about my approach, I have to deal with both the spiritual side and the human side of who we are. And usually it's the human side that's in the way of creating what matters to us. So, uh, yeah, I think that kind of covers it.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Nina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about your book, Change the World, one book at a time. Let's start with the core premise. Changing the world is an age of information overload. Why do you believe a single book remains a uniquely powerful tool for creating a meaningful, positive change compared to other media?
Because books are enduring. People still read books despite, we're in the information age and a book is information. And there are people who still like to read, even if they're reading digital books. And, they say your word is more powerful than the sword. In this day and age, we need peaceful change. And if you know how to write a book that actually motivates and inspires people to take new action, then your book can become the tool that you use to fulfill your mission or purpose or start a movement. I just think words are enormously powerful and that books are powerful even in this day and age.
Books are powerful indeed. What is the crucial difference between an author who wants to make a difference and one who actually does? Is it the intention, the message, or strategy behind the book?
Uh, Most of those things. So I think that you have to have the intention when you set out to write the book that you want to create change. And that could be change in life, it could be change in communities, it could be change in an organization, it could be change in a governmental system, in the world, whatever. But you have to have that intention that I'm going to write a book meant to inspire and motivate people to take new action. Then you have to there's several things you have to do. Number one, you have to become very familiar with change. Like, how do you change? Let's start there. Like, do you like change? Do you not like change? Do you resist it? Um, do you thrive on change? What's your relationship with change? Now, if you know also who your reader is, which hopefully you have chosen an audience for your book, then you can begin to say, well, so who are they? Are they like me? Do they deal with change the same way? And you can begin to delve into your audience's sense of, their willingness, let's say, to change. Then you have to create a community. So first you have to become familiar with change. Then and there's a change process. You have to understand the change process because people don't just change at the drop of a hat. Usually they get ready to be ready to change, and then they're kind of ready to change, and then they change, and then they have to maintain the change. There's a whole process to it. And so if you want to write for change, you have to understand that process. You also have to create an audience for your book. So if you think about people who maybe aren't planning on writing a book, but they are using hashtags or video or whatever to create a movement, to attract people to their movement, authors of change have to do the same. We have to have an audience, we have to have an engaged community of people who want to take up the mission. And then you have to actually write the book. And so with this intention to write a book that inspires and motivates change, you have to understand what makes the written word actually move people to do something different. And there are lots of different strategies that you can use that are used by all sorts of change agents. You know, look at coaches or Tony Robbins or any number of people who are out there creating change on a big level, even though it might be one person at a time, but they're creating change. They do it because they know the tactics and strategies, and those can be employed in your writing. So if you do all those things, you're highly likely to actually write a book that creates change.
Very well said, Miss Nina. So, how does an author identify their spiritual change? Is it about shifting one person's heart, transforming transforming community, or influencing a global system? And why is defining this scope essential for writing?
So you're talking about defining the scope of the change you want. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Well, I think that it starts with your own passion and interest in a certain type of change, right? I mean, you're not going to go out there and try to change somebody to do something that you don't care about at all. So it starts with your own interest and your passion in something, and then you can begin to strategize as to, okay, so how big a change am I able to to create, or how big a change do I want to create? You know, is the transformation one life at a time, or is it, you know, a global change? Do I want to stop global warming? Like, that's a big one, right? But you could also have somebody, you know, you could have somebody who says, well, I know a lot about autistic children, and I want to help the parents of autistic children. So that's the scope of my change, is to support parents of autistic children. Very different. But you have to know what it is that you're passionate about and pursue that. And a lot of people have a sense of purpose. You know, they feel it's their purpose to, I don't know, change the way a government is run, or to uh, save horses, or, you know, anything. And that's what they're going to pursue. And the scope of that, scope of what they do, depends on the type of change they want to inspire.
Ms. Nina, the most impactful books often stem from a personal wound or deep seated conviction. How can an author mine their own experiences and values to find a universal message that resonates, that motivates others to action?
So I think you're right. I think a lot of times we write about the things that we know, and often that's pain. So memoirists are very good at mining their own life stories, and memoirs can be very change inspiring. On the other hand, if you get away from personal story in that sense, you can use your personal, you can use anecdotes from your life in your books, even if it's straight nonfiction, if it's prescriptive nonfiction. But I think you're always looking at where can I help others? So somebody who wants to write for change is wanting to help, to serve, to support other people. And so very often it's, oh, this happened to me and I figured it out, you know, I figured out how to heal from that, and so let me teach that to other people. But it could be very simple. I mean, I'm also a magazine journalist, and I've written many articles for magazines that stemmed from the struggles in my life or in my children's life, or, you know, things like that. I won an award for an article about changing schools and about competition, children in competitive sports. And so I think it's the same for a book. If you have an area of your life that you feel you learned how to solve a problem or resolve an issue, then that's great fodder for a book. But it could also be on a bigger level. Okay, so you worked in an organization and you managed to change the organization in some way and you want to share that with other people. Maybe that's not a healing per se, but it could be healing to some other people in other organizations, right? So I don't know that it always comes from a wound, this desire to write, but it does quite often.
Hmm, definitely. And Miss Nina, how do you balance writing and compelling character-driven narrative with the goal of delivering a meaningful message, ensuring the cause does not overshadow the story?
Well, I'm not a novelist. I do have a novel, but it's not ready for consumption. But it's not really my area of expertise. But I think that you can write in Change the World One Book at a Time. I share some information for novelists, and I think that you can take the basic concepts of writing for change and apply them to the story. So if you really think about it, every novel, the main character, the protagonist, is going to have a transformational arc. They're going to change. And so if your idea is to take someone from not caring about the environment at all to caring about the environment, then that's what your character is going to have to go through, right? From being someone who maybe leaves trash everywhere to someone who picks up trash. Very simplistic example. But so they have to transform in some way. And so you're going to have to use fictional elements and fictional craft to write this story of transformation. But the whole time in the back of your mind is I want to have my readers realize the importance of being environmentally conscious in this case. And there are novelists who write for environmental change. So I think that's the idea. You have a character who's going to be changing anyway, and so you just have in the as the plot line how they're changing, and the change is related to your cause.
Interesting, interesting, Miss Nina. For a nonfiction authors, how do you structure a book to move readers from awareness to action? What is the blueprint for transforming passive reader into active participants in change?
So you guys said about structuring the book. So typically in the nonfiction book, if it's like a how-to book or a prescriptive nonfiction book that's telling you how to do something or solve something, you're going to approach it as if you were teaching. And so the structure of the book begins with the problem and follows through with the solution. So it's fairly simplistic. Um, I think that the way you move the reader, though, is in how you write the book. And there are, well, as I said, there's so much out there about how people change, so much knowledge about how people change and how to get them to change, move them in that direction of doing something different, that you want to apply that. So that could be contrast, it could be storytelling, it could be using neurolinguistic programming, which is a persuasive language patterns. It could be uh, demonstrating the pain of where they are now and the pleasure of where they're going, where you're trying to take them. All of that comes into play because you have to use. You can't just, if you really want to move your readers to take action, you can't just write the way you would always write. You have to always have your purpose in the back of your mind, and then you have to be employing strategies that we know help people choose to change.
We use the change for sure. So let's talk about the sustaining and the mission and the author. Writing a book for impact can be an emotionally taxing project. How does an author maintain their passion and avoid burnout over the long haul of writing, publishing, and advocating?
So that's a really good question. You have to, because you have to, when you're writing, you have to still be building your audience, as I mentioned, right? So the advocating for your book and your mission is happening at the same time that you're writing, and you have to. So for me, I write for a few hours and then I take a break, and then I do the promotional work. I get on social media or whatever it is. Once your book is published, um, hopefully in the period of time between when you finish writing the book and it gets edited and it gets designed and all those things, and it's a little different, the process, depending on how you are being published, traditionally or self-published. But in that interim period, hopefully you're setting up your promotion. So if you get it done in advance, you might have a period that is very intense, but then you can slack off. And so that allows you to not burn out, because you're having a period of intense focus on promotion, and then you can just sit back and watch. So for instance, for me, I usually set up a virtual book tour. And the virtual book tour includes what I would call a blog tour and a podcast and radio tour. They're combined, making it a virtual tour, because everything is on the internet, right? Not that I don't do any in-person appearances, but primarily I focus on online. So the podcast part of it, other than pitching podcasts, is pretty simple. If you put an hour in every other day, pitching podcast hosts, you're probably going to land some guest spots, right? Like this one. Then all you have to do is show up and be willing to talk about your book. That's easy. The blog tour part of it is a little more involved, because bloggers want you to either write a blog post for them, so a guest blog post, or they want to interview you via email. So they're going to send you questions and you're going to have to write out all your answers. Some of them will do their own reviews or just feature the book, and that's all simple. But these interviews and these guest blog posts, that takes time. So I can tell you from my own, from my own experience with this particular book, Change the World One Book at a Time, I probably spent 2 or 3 weeks, most of my time, on writing blog posts and answering interview questions. And I produced about 14,000 words in that amount of time. So that was an intensive block of time spent getting those all done in advance so I could give them to the people who were expecting them. But now it's much less. So I avoid burnout because I did it, and now I can relax. And all I have to do is every day I go and I see who posted something, and I share it on social media, and that's it, right? And I show up for podcasts and whatever. But so it's a balancing of intense spurts, like intense spurts when you're writing, intense spurts when you're promoting, and then periods where you allow yourself to have a lull, a time when you're not doing quite as much.
Very well said, Miss Nina. So, as a 20 times Amazon best-selling author, as well as a coach, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Short-term goals right now is to continue promoting and getting readers for Change the World One Book at a Time, because it's my purpose with that. My mission is to have my book inspire and motivate other writers to write for change. Long-term goals, depends how long-term you're talking about. I have a book that I have, my very first traditionally published books, I own the rights to it, and I want to re-release that this year. I have a series of ebooks in the Write Nonfiction Now series, and I want to revise and release those not just as ebooks, but print books. I did 2 of them last year. And I have a literary agent who's pitching another project for me that's more personal and spiritual growth oriented. And so I'm hoping that this year I will be finishing that book, which has a few chapters left. And beyond the writing, there's, coaching, and I'm going to be revamping my Nonfiction Writers University. and I offer the Inspired Creator Community twice a year. So I have lots of goals when it comes to long term, meaning just this year. I'm only looking at this year.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Nina. I'm looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a best-selling author like you?
Commit. Most writers say they want to write a book and they want to succeed, and they're not committed, and therefore they don't follow through. Number two, shift your identity from being a writer to being an author, or even better, to being a successful or a best-selling author. Because when you shift your identity, you immediately develop the mindsets and habits of someone who would have that identity. So when you say, I am a best-selling author, and that is now your identity, even though you haven't yet published the book or been a bestseller, but this is now your identity. I am a best-selling author. You can ask yourself, well, what would a best-selling author do today? Like, what would their habits be? How would they be spending their time? What kind of actions would they be taking? And how would they be looking at the world and at their work? And I got a rejection from a literary agent. What would their mindset be around that? Would it be, oh, I'm done? I failed and it's over? Or would they say, oh, that literary agent wasn't the right one for me. I'll send it, a letter to a new one, to another one. So this is how you get from where you are to where you want to go. It's not by waiting to be the person, not by waiting to be the best-selling author. It's by being the best-selling author now and doing all the things, taking the actions that make you a bestseller. So that would be my best advice, is step into the identity of successful or best-selling author.
Thank you for that advice, Miss Nina. And can you please recommend a book, books that influence your journey?
Well, it's not a book on writing. I would recommend a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And the reason for that is that our mental state dictates so much of our ability to create what matters to us and succeed at whatever is important to us. If you have negative mental chatter, it's going to hold you back. And I firmly believe that our thoughts are creative. So if you are thinking about things like, if I write a book, it will fail, or nobody will read it, or it won't sell, or writing a book is too hard, or I can't actually write a book that changes the world, who am I to do that? Those thoughts are not going to help you. In fact, they're going to hold you back, and you're going to create failure rather than success. So you have to learn to manage your mind, manage your brain's functions, because it's your brain that's constantly trying to keep you safe. And when you say, I'm going to write a book, it says, no, 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 that's dangerous, even though it's not. And so it's going to give you all the reasons why you can't do it. So to me, Wayne Dyer's book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, is essential, because you have to learn how to manage your thoughts.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Nina. So before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course, my book 101 review in its sixth season as well. Comedy 101 third season, Food 101 in sixth season 2, Geography 101 Love Letters, Movie 101 Review, Music 101 our fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 fourth season, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. So please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Nina, tell us your final vision. Imagine your reader has finished your book and it's truly inspired. What is the first concrete step you hope to take, and how does your book equip them to do it?
Well, the first concrete step would be for them to really understand the change process. And my book equips them to do that because it explains the change process, right? So it's going to make them an expert in change. And that's what they need to be. If they want other people to change, they need to be an expert in the transformation process.
You need to be expert, people, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Nina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And can you please invite our listeners to support all your books, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, you can support this particular book, Change the World One Book at a Time, by uh, purchasing it and by going out and writing for change. You can find out more about the book at ninaamir.com, Books That Change Lives. Or no, I'm sorry, ninaamir.com, Change the World. And you can go to ninaamir.com and you will find out all about me. But the main thing right now is to go out there and become what I call an author of change. Write a book that makes a difference.
The author of change. Yes, people ask about Miss Nina Amir because if you support her for sure, more and more empowering change will rise. So, Miss Nina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Welcome, people. See you soon.